Hello everyone, what's up? It's me again, JunkMaster3, and what do you know, I'm back with a new video, and this is going to be another update video. I haven't made an update video in maybe like 2 or 3 months or so, I believe. I'm not really sure. Maybe it's just 2 months, I'm not too sure. But anyway, I have plenty of films that I used to think, oh my god, I need to show these because I have totally forgotten about most of these films that I have bought. So, and some of them have been laying around for quite a while as well. So I just decided to make this video. So yeah, let's begin right away. And like usual, when I make my update videos, I try to put all of the. I'm going to start with the DVDs and then I'm going to end it with the Blu-rays. And I'm going to try to show you all of the non-horror titles first, and then I'm going to show you all the horror titles. So if you're just interested in the horror titles, that's going to be in the later part of this video. So yeah, what are we waiting for? Let's begin right away. First up, we have a film called The Cynic, the Rat, and the Fist. I'm not too sure if this has any connection with any other film, but it's directed by Umberto Lenzi, and he made plenty of these type of films in the 70s. So yeah, really interesting cast as well. John Saxon, Thomas Millian. I'm not really sure how you pronounce his name, but yeah. Anyway, this looks interesting. Then we have a film which I've been trying to get a hold of for quite some time, and I was just so glad when I found this. This film has also an interesting cast. It's Burt Reynolds and Casey Siemaszko. I always butcher his name, but I always think of him as Charlie in the Young Guns film. But the film is called Breaking In. Some comedy film with these two. Looks really interesting. And also I have to say, I'm probably going to repeat myself over and over and over again, but well, I guess you eventually get used to it. So the next one is a film directed by Lance Mungia, who I've only seen one other film by him, and that was the Crow Wicked Prayer, which is, well, people have different opinions about that one, but this is his film called Six String Samurai. Apparently like a low budget film that got a lot of praise when it came out, and I think this came out in the late 90s or something, so yeah. Anyway, yeah, there we have it. Then we have a film with Mila Kunis, and this film is called Boot Camp. I think this is known under some other title as well, I'm not really sure, but this came out in 2008, and it's like an action thriller, I believe, maybe more of a thriller. It says on the back that it's a thriller, so who knows. Let's see, I have to move some of these things away. Then we have a film by the Wachowski brothers, or you could even call them brothers anymore. Well, you all know that story, that's just silly, just me talking about that. But this is their film called Bound, with Jennifer Tilly and Gina Gershon, I believe. Gershon, I probably butcher her name, but looks interesting. So some action drama film, I believe. So yeah, there you go. And also, I didn't notice this when I bought it, but this is another one of those replay releases, and they usually release like early 90s, late 80s action films mainly. I mean, there's some late 90s films as well that they've released. So, but yeah, I'm interested in that company in general. Usually, not this one in particular, but usually they release films that are pretty obscure as well. So yeah. Now let's see here, what is this English title? The English title for this one is There Goes the Neighborhood, with Jeff Daniels. Early 90s comedy film. So yeah. Now this one, this seems to be one of those really like, I'm not really sure if you could call it depressing, but really horrifying films. I mean, just based on the cover art as well, it's just like, whoa, what is going on? But the film is called The Day After. Just look at that cover, it looks really horrifying to me, so yeah. And then once again we have another film with Gina Gershon, and the film is called Pray for Rock and Roll, released in the early 2000s, I believe. So yeah, apparently all of the songs in that film were also performed by Gina Gershon. You know who I'm talking about. Sorry, I'm just gonna move it. I'm just gonna leave it at that. So the next one is an early 80s comedy film. Just because it was made in the 80s, that was really the main reason why I picked this one up. And I think this is quite tricky to come across from time to time. So the film is called Best Defense, with Dudley Moore and Eddie Murphy. think this might be one of the earlier Eddie Murphy films, really, when I come to think of it. 1984, yeah. And the next one is another comedy film, this time with Roddy Piper and Tanya Roberts, and this film is called Body Slam. Yeah, and this is directed by Hal Needham, who is probably most famous for directing the Cannonball Run films and one of my favorite 80s cheese films, Rad. Really like that one, so yeah. And then we have early 90s sci-fi film, I believe. This film is called Replicator. Really weird looking release, if you ask me. I think this might be I think this is an Australian release. I'm not really sure, but yeah. And then we have a film with Ron Marchini. I don't really know how you pronounce his name, but I saw him quite recently in a film called Jungle Wolf, which was just really entertaining, and because of how incredibly silly it was. And he was also in another film called Karate Rider, which I thought was really funny as well. But this is the film called Omega Cop. Yeah, there you go. Let's see. And we continue. The next one is a film called, a very strange title, Mama, There's a Man in Your Bed. A really strange title to me. This is a French film, I believe. That came out in the late 90s. No, late 80s, sorry. Completely got that wrong. And then we have a film with Sandra Bullock and Bill Pullman. I think I've said before that I'm not really that big fan of Sandra Bullock in general, but I've come to realize she's actually been in some good films. So yeah, you can always change your opinion about a specific person. So, but anyway, this film is called While You Were Sleeping, from the late 90s. And then we have a film which I'm kind of ashamed of that I haven't seen. I mean, I've heard so many people talk about this one, and this is like one of Robin Williams' best performances. And this is the film called Mrs. Doubtfire. Of course, I've seen this character like everywhere, but I've never seen the film itself. But I know its premise, if that makes sense. So yeah. And then the next one is like a. This might even, I mean, maybe I should have put this one in the horror section of this video. I'm not really sure, but this is the film by Brian De Palma called Phantom of the Paradise. Been on the hunt for this one for quite some time, and I was really after this particular Studio S release as well, so really glad that I finally found it. And then we have a comedy film from the mid-90s, and the film is called Major Pain. Never heard about this one before, but I mean, just the cover art really made me want to get this film. About some people in the military, and I guess it's some really rough general or like lieutenant or something, I'm not really sure, but yeah, looks really hilarious. And then we have a film from the late 80s, that's the main reason why I picked it up, and the film is called Baby Boom. Yeah, with Diane Keaton. And then we have, once again, here we come, there is a Swedish title of this, but I'm just going to look for the English title. A Perfect Murder, of course, with Michael Douglas, Gwyneth Paltrow, and Viggo Mortensen. Yeah, I'm really a big sucker for, like, especially like 90s thrillers, because it feels like the thrillers that were made in the 90s were one of the better ones. The ones that came in the early 2000s were like a little bit so-so, in my opinion. Not all of them, but most of them. And we have another one which I think is, maybe this is more of a drama, I'm not really sure, but City Hall with Al Pacino, John Cusack, Bridget Fonda, and Danny Aiello. I always butcher his name as well, so sorry for that. Then we have a Western film called, I mean, I'm not really sure if this is the original title for this film, but this one has Lee Van Cleef in it, of course. And the movie is called Blood Money. Yeah, really strange looking release in my opinion, but yeah, there you go. Then we have a film with Bruce Willis. Really sad about, I heard the news that he recently got dementia. That is really sad. But anyway, this is, I think this might have been one of his earliest films, and this one came out before Die Hard. And the film is called Blind Date, with also with Kim Basinger. So yeah. And then we have a film which is, yes, this is a early 90s film. Yeah, it is. And to be fair, the main reason why I picked this one up was because of one of the actors in this. I am a big fan of his. The film is called Midnight Sting, and the actor I'm referring to is James Woods. I always think he puts up a really good show in most of his films. Yeah, Midnight Sting. Now we get some weird ninja stuff. And what do you know? It's directed by Godfrey Ho. So the first one is called Ninja Kill. This one I have seen before. But to be fair though, most of those Godfrey Ho films, they all blend into one for me. So it's just really a confused mess, to be fair. But I remember really liking this one. So yeah, Ninja Kill. And the next one I think I haven't seen before. But once again, it's Richard Harrison and it's Godfrey Ho. The film is called Cobra Against Ninja. So once again, I think most of these cover arts are very misleading. So yeah, keep that in mind if you ever want to buy any of those Godfrey Ho films. So the next one is a drama film. It says on the back that it's an action film, but I think on IMDb it said it was more of a drama film. But the film is called Terminal Bliss. I read a little bit about the storyline. I don't really recognize any of the actors in the film, but I read a little bit about the storyline, and the storyline sounds really interesting. So yeah, Terminal Bliss. And then we have a film by Luc Besson. I probably butchered his name, but this is with Isabelle Adjani and Christopher Lambert, or Lambert. I'm not really sure how you pronounce his name, because I think he's from... Is he from Belgium or something? I'm not really sure. Don't quote me on that, but the film is called Subway. This is another one of those 80s films that I've been on a hunt for quite some time, so I'm really glad that I finally found it. So yeah, so let's continue. The next one is called Blown Away, and this is from the 90s, and it's with Jeff Bridges and Tommy Lee Jones. Only heard really good things about this one, so really stoked to check it out. I've heard it has plenty of explosions in it, so I guess that's a film that I can watch with my father, because he's a big fan of explosive action films, so yeah. And then we have a film called Against All Odds from the early 80s with Rachel Ward and Jeff Bridges. And the next one is this is sort of a blind buy, but the main reason why I picked this one up was because it was made in the 80s, or late 80s for that matter. And the film is called A Mystery Train. Yeah. Also, I think I've heard, when I come to think of it, I think I've heard some really good things about it as well, so that might be another reason why I picked it up, so yeah. And then we have a film with Keanu Reeves and Morgan Freeman, and the film is called Chain Reaction. Yeah. Now, I'm not really sure about the next one, because when I typed this one in on IMDb, I think I got a completely other title, so I don't think this is the original title, but I think if you actually do type this one in on IMDb, you do get the original title after a while, so... but anyway, the film is called Enter the Shoot Fighter. The main reason why I wanted to pick this one up was because Matthias Hughes is in it, and he was always in those 90s action films, and he always played a bad guy in general, because he looks quite intimidating. So yeah. And then we have a film with Jet Li. I've not seen a Jet Li film in ages, and to be fair, I don't think he's that active anymore. But then again, I mean, I'm not really sure how old he is, but I've not seen one of his films in quite a while. But this is the film called Cradle to the Grave. Yeah, also with DMX, rest in peace. Then the next one is a comedy film from the 90s, and the film is called Captain Ron. Looks really hilarious. And then we have a Stallone film, which I've never seen. I think this might be one of the last Stallone films I needed to get before like really completing all of his filmography. Well, I don't have Creed 2 or Creed 3. Oh, sorry, Creed 3 yet, but and I think he also was in the wasn't he also in some weird Spy Kids film as well? I'm not really sure, but now I just keep mumbling on here. But the film is called Daylight, from the mid-90s, I believe. Yeah. And then we have a Western film with John Wayne, and the film is called The Searchers. And this is like with a slipcover like there, right there. So yeah. And then we have a film with Dennis Hopper and directed by Dennis Hopper, and the film is called. Let's see here. Yeah, what am I talking about? The film is called The Lost Movie. Drama film from the 70s, I believe. Yeah, 71, early 70s. And now, let's see here. I have no idea what this is called in English. But this is a film by Enzo G. Castellari. And the film is, with Franco Nero. This is from the late 90s or early 90s, I believe. No, mid 90s, sorry. And I think this is called like Jonathan the Avenger or something. Don't quote me on that. But yeah, it's from 1995, and Enzo G. Castellari. So you might be able to find this on IMDb if you're interested in it. So yeah. And then we have another one of those films which I'm gonna try to pronounce the original title. I think this is called just The Andalusian Dog or something in English, but Un Chien Andalou. Yeah, of course, this is the famous one with the eye right there. And that is just also a short film, but this one also comes with like a documentary about the film and the effects it have had on the movie industry, I believe. So. Or something like that. So yeah, sounds interesting. I've seen the short film, but I've never seen that documentary before, so that could be interesting. And then we have a French film with Vincent Cassel and Monica Bellucci, and the film is called Doberman. Is it called Doberman? Yeah, Doberman. So yeah. And the next one I picked up was a film with Christopher Walken, Natasha Richardson, Rupert Everett, and Helen Mirren. And the film is called The Comfort of Strangers. Not really sure when this came out. Might be 80s. But yeah, right there. And then the next one I picked up was a film with Christian Slater. That was really the main reason why I picked it up. And this is from the early 90s as well. And this film is called Untamed Heart. So yeah, let's see here. Now the next stack is actually gonna be some Asian films. So the first 3 or 4 titles are gonna be Japanese films. So the first one I picked up was Godzilla 2000. This one I've always been not fascinated by, but I've always wanted to see it. I'm not too sure about this particular release. If you're looking for this film, you might consider to pick up another release, because when I looked up on the back of the DVD, it says it's only like the language is like dubbed, I believe. So it's a dubbed version like in English. So, and I usually prefer to have the original language or audio instead of just dubbing. I just think that is lazy in general, but sometimes that can be more charming depending on what film you're watching. So yeah. And then we have some anime films or whatever. First one being called X. Very clever title. This is from the 90s, so yeah, looked interesting. And then we have a, could you call it this is another anime, but this is like a series. And this film, not film, but this series is called Trinity Blood. Yeah. There. And then we have a film I've only heard really good things about, and the film is called Norwegian Wood. Yeah. Some Japanese drama film. And then we have some Chinese. I think the next 3 titles are Chinese films. So the first one is The Butterfly Murders. This is directed by Park Chui, probably butchered his name. So yeah, this was his first real film that he directed. So, but yeah, looks really cool. So yeah. And then we have a film which I'm not really sure, but this kind of looks like, I think it even says on the back of this, Charlie's Angels meets Crouching Tiger. Now, Charlie's Angels was actually the first thing that came to mind when I saw the front cover of this. I mean, I'm not a big fan of Charlie's Angels. I've never really been that. I think it's a silly, weird, stupid film, but this one actually looks like it has some potential because it's a Chinese film, and sometimes I feel they are more creative when it comes to their storylines or their films. But the film is called So Close. Yeah. Now let's see the next one. I have no idea what this is called in English. I'm gonna have to look it up right here on IMDb. Sorry for this, because it only has the Swedish title on the front and the Chinese title on the back. Now I think this is called Better Days. A fairly new film, which I think got a whole lot of praise like 2 or 3 years ago. Never seen, but looks really cool. Not cool, but interesting. So the last two are South Korean films, and the first one is called Resurrection of the Little Match Girl. And another reason why I picked this one up it was because it's that particular label, Asian, what was it called? Asian Vision. I usually think they release really interesting titles, so yeah. And the Lost Korean film, yeah, but anyway, this is also released by Asian Vision. And the film is called, let's see, 2009 Lost Memories. Apparently this is one of the film with the biggest budget ever in Korea, or at least according to the back of this DVD. I'm not really sure how accurate that is or not, but yeah, sounds amazing. So yeah. So now we move on to the horror films. So this video. So the first one being A Deep Blue Sea. I know this one got like not a remake, but I think like a sequel or something like years after this one. I've never seen this particular one, but I've heard this is supposed to be a really entertaining schlockfest. So yeah, Deep Blue Sea. Then we have a film directed by none other than Victor Salva. And the less said about him, the better. But the film is called Dark House. The main reason why I wanted to get this film was not because of that director, but because of Tobin Bell, who is most famous for being in the Saw films. But apparently he's in this one, so that's the reason why I picked it up. Dark House. And then this is a complete blind buy. I have no idea what this is about, but looks like some low budget like zombie film. The Stink of Flesh. Yeah. And then the next one is a German release of an Italian film, and the film is called Eyeball. Now this is by, I think this is another one of those. Yeah, this is an Umberto Lenzi film, Giallo film, I believe, from the mid-70s. So yeah. Now the next one, I'm not really sure if this is really a horror film. I think this might be more of an action sci-fi film. But this one has Rutger Hauer in it, and the film is called Crossworlds. Yeah, really, I mean, pretty simple cover, but still really cool in my opinion. Now the next one is a late 90s horror film. This might be another one of those really low budget ones, I'm not really sure. It says it's a vampire thriller, which looks, I mean, that sounds really strange. But the film is called Cold Hearts, with Amy Jo Johnson. I think that's the actress who was in the Power Rangers TV series. I'm not really sure, don't quote me on that, but I think that's the actress. Now the next one, I think these two, I'm not sure if these two have any connections with one another, but the first one is called Bio Zombie, Chinese horror comedy, and then the next one is called Bio Cops. So I'm not really sure if these are connected in one way or another, but and I think this might be more of an action comedy, and the other one is more of a horror comedy. So yeah. Now the next one is a film that I've actually already seen. Picked it up because of the cover art. I've always been fascinated by this cover art, and for some reason I never got to it to pick it up, but now I did. And the film is directed by Paco Plaza, who is probably most famous for directing the Rec films, or at least I think most of the Rec films. And the film is called Xmas Tale. Now this cover art, like I said, is really interesting to me. But the but the film itself is very like lackluster to me. When you look at this, you're expecting like, oh my god, this is gonna be brutal and really like tense. I mean, it is tense to a certain degree, but it just feels very tame based on how this cover art looks like, because this is like a made-for-TV film, so that might be the reason why they couldn't show too much blood or gore effects or anything like that. So it's sort of a disappointment, sadly. So yeah. Now the next one is a film which I think is based on a story by Clive Barker, but I don't think he directed it. And the film is called Dread. So yeah. Yeah. Pretty much a blind bite. It was just based on the fact that Clive Barker, that's the reason why I picked it up. Now the next one I picked up solely because of the title and because of how ridiculous this sounds, or the whole premise. This is a full moon film, and the film is called PMS Cop. I sort of have this thing, like I feel like I need to get all of those films that have cop in the title, like Maniac Cop, Psycho Cop, Scanner Cop. I mean, all of those cop films. It seems like there was so many of those released in the 80s and 90s, so yeah. Now the next one, I'm not really sure if this is the original title or not, but this is a Israeli horror film, which is quite interesting. Now the film is called Rabies, and this came out in 2000. When did this come out? 2010. So yeah. Now the next one, this might be a really bad film. I'm not really sure because I didn't realize this up until I bought it. But this is a film produced by the Asylum, or made by the Asylum. And for those of you who are aware of the Asylum, they mainly produce really, really low budget, kind of made for TV garbage, really. But anyway, this film is called Way of the Vampire. And I just suspect that they just put Bram Stoker's in front of the title just to sell more copies. But you can see right down there, I'm not really sure, but it says Asylum down there, and you can barely see it, but that's when I saw that, I'm like, oh my god, this could be really, really bad. So the next one I picked up is I think this is another Chinese film. This film is called Dumplings. Now, when I read about the storyline about this one, it sounds very similar to the film released in the 90s called The Untold Story with Anthony Wong. So yeah, that's really one of the main reasons why I picked this one up. So yeah, and I think that has been on quite many like disturbing movies lists as well. So yeah. Now the next one is a film which it says here on the back that it's a thriller, but on IMDb it's categorized as a thriller or horror film. This is directed by Rennie Harlin, I believe, yes. And this film is called Mind Hunters. Yeah. And then we have two releases, Mando Macabre releases. The first one being Blood of the Virgins. Now with a cover out like that, you can't. I just needed to get this, so yeah. And then we have I believe this is a very, very sleazy Japanese horror film. I'm not really sure if it's a horror film, maybe or for drama, I'm not really sure, but it looks really sleazy. Apparently like a non-exploitation film. And the film is called Sins of Sister Lucia. I'm not really sure how you pronounce that, but yeah. Then we have a film called Primal, not to be confused with all of the other. I think there's at least like 4 or 5 films with the same title. This is from 2011, I believe. Sounds really interesting. Just based on what I've read about it. So yeah, sort of like a survival film. I really miss those type of films when you put random people in a film and they have to stay alive in one way or another to survive like a threat, like a monster, or like something really like tense like that. So yeah. Now the next one is called Starry Eyes. I probably butchered the title. Starry Eyes, maybe. Yeah. Now that one was a complete blind buy. Now the next one I think was a film that I got recommended to me by one of my friends, and this film is called Barbarian Sound Studio. Yeah. And then we have a film which is, I think this might be another Israeli horror film. Yeah, it says Israel on the back. So the film is called Big Bad Wolves. Some weird werewolf film, I just assume. So the next one is a film by... Who directed this? Doesn't say on the back, but it has Jeffrey Combs and Michael Berryman in it, and the film is called Brutal. So yeah, they think that came out in the same around the same time as Hostel. I think very many directors wanted to capitalize on the success of Hostel. That's just my guess. So the next one is actually a film that I watched not that long ago in the theaters, And this one I really enjoyed. I actually enjoyed this one more than the first one. And the film is called Terrifier 2. Now, my biggest complaints about this film is the actress who plays the mother character in this, which I thought her acting was really bad. And the biggest complaint I have with this one though is the runtime. It's like 2 hours and what is it, like 2 hours and 18 minutes, and that's just way too long for a film like this. But other than that, it's a really great like splatter or gore film in general. So if you like slashers in general, I think you'll enjoy Terrifier 2. So the next one is a fairly recent horror film that came out, and the film is called Antidote. Really cool cover art. It just comes down to the fact that I despise these like 18 ratings. Might be sometimes you can flip those and sometimes you can't. I'm not really sure if you can this on this particular one, but yeah, hey hi ho. Now the next one, I believe this might be like a weird bootleg. I'm not really sure. This is a Japanese horror film from the late 80s called Sweet Home. The reason why I suspect this is a bootleg is because it says Twisted Anger on the back, and I think Twisted Anger were one of those companies which I don't think exist anymore, but I think they usually released films that had never been released on DVD or Blu-ray before, so basically bootlegs. And usually I am not a fan when you have bootlegs in your collection. You want to get the real release, but if there's no other way to get a physical release than that, I can understand that. So I'm not really for stealing or anything like that. It's just it comes down to the fact if a film is so obscure that it's never been released on no other format than VHS, then well, what do you do? So yeah. So let's move on from that subject to the next film. Now this film is called The Rope Curse. Rope Curse. And I think this is yeah, it's another Chinese film, so yeah. And then picked up this one. This is directed by J.R. Bookwalter, who directed The Dead Next Door, which I'm a big fan of. I think that might be one of his first films. And I think this is another early effort of his. And the film is called Robot Ninja. With a title like that, you just needed to pick it up. So, yeah. Now let's move on to the next stack. The next stack is... Next stack. The next film is a film called German Angst. And I think this is like an anthology film. And I think one of these films or short films were... Or anthology, not short films. One of these stories was directed by Jörg Buttgereit. So, yeah. Sorry, I just kept mumbling there. So, the next one is a complete blind buy. The film is called Heartless, from the early 2010s, I believe. So yeah. And then we have a film that I've been wanting to see for, I'm not really sure, maybe at least 10 years. Heard some mixed things about it. I think this is more of like a ghost film. And the film is called The Nun. Not The Nun that came out in like the mid 2010s. This is the film that came out in 2005. And I think this is directed by a Spanish director as well. If I'm not completely wrong. Don't quote me on that, but yeah. The Nun. And then we have a film called Earth versus the Spider. I think I have seen the original one. I think this is like a remake. This one came out in the early 2000s. I think the original one was just called The Spider or The Invasion of the Spider or something like that. I'm pretty sure I've seen that. So, and that was quite fun as well. I think this was like a 50s film, so yeah. Now the next one is a film directed by Toby Hooper. The strangest thing about this is that I've seen the sequel to this, but I haven't seen this one. But I used to assume that they are quite standalone films in general, because the second one I don't think think is called 2. It just is called something else for some reason. I think it's called Death Roll for some reason. So this one is called Crocodile by Toby Hooper from the early 2000s. So yeah. And then we have another blind buy. And the film is called Make Out with Violence. Yeah. And then we have a film by Adam Wingard, I believe. Wingard, I'm pretty sure how you pronounce his name. This is the film called Horrible Way to Die. Is it like that? Yeah, a horrible way to die. Sorry. Now the next one is a collection of films. This is the Tomy films. I have seen the first one. I thought that was so. I've seen the second one, which for some reason isn't included in this one. So that's really strange that they just didn't decide to have that in the collection. Which I think is just called Tomy Another Face, which I thought was so as well. So I just really hope for the other ones to be good. So in this particular one, you have got Tomy Replay, Tomy Rebirth, and Tomy The Final Chapter. Sort of like Japanese ghost films in general. I mean, the thing is, when it comes to ghost films or demon films in general, I just really prefer the Japanese films like that, because the American films just seems like they just rely on strictly on jump scares and no atmosphere, while the Japanese people, they really focus more on the atmosphere, even though they can put some jump scares in it without being too much. So yeah, that's just my personal opinion. Now the next one is a really low budget film, I believe. This is obviously made to cash in on the success of Lost House on the Left, even though I think this came out in the early 2000s. This film is called Lost House on Hell Street. And this cover art really sold it for me as well. It kind of looks like a weird August Underground homage or something. It's based on the hammer there and the face right there. So, where's that hammer? No, that's, what am I talking about? That's just a hatchet. Ugh, completely blind. Now, the next one I picked up because of the stupid, silly title, and it's a Trauma production, and the film is called Killer Condom. Wow, just wow! Someone came up with that idea. Then the next one is a film which I think I actually have on VHS, believe it or not, but I decided to pick it up on DVD as well. And the film is called Townies. Never seen though, so yeah. But this cover art is really cool. Now the next one is a film released by the Hardgore label that I think was quite big in the UK back in the day. And the film is called Maniacal. Probably butchered the title, but for some weird reason I feel like the guy here with the knife on the cover art kind of looks like Anton LaVey. Now the next one is this has to be a shot on video film because it's released by Wild Eye Entertainment, or Wild Eye Releasing I would say, and the film is called Stabbed in the Face, early 2000s. And the next one is a made-for-TV film, and I think this came out just about the same time as the first Star Wars film. Why do I mention Star Wars? Well, because Harrison Ford is in this film, and the film is called The Possessed. The really strange-looking guy on the front cover. And then we have like a double pack with two films, Mark of Cain and Thrill Kill, both released in the 80s. Not sure anyone talk about this one, so I just assume they are very obscure. So yeah, there you go. And then unfortunately, I found this one out when I actually got it in the mail. Like, oh my god, this is actually a bootleg. I'm like, oh, that's a bummer. But this is the sequel to a film which I've never seen before. But the film is called Patrick Still Lives. Now this is a sequel to the film, obviously titled Patrick. And I think that might be an Australian film, or I'm just completely wrong. I'm not really sure, but anyway, this is the sequel. I'm not really sure if it's a standalone sequel, or if it's actually like continues where the first one left off. Have no idea about that, but yeah, we'll have to wait and see. Now the next one I picked up because I've seen this film. I wasn't the biggest fan of it, but I think, well, I might give it another chance. This is an Australian horror film, Australian slasher from the late 90s, not late 90s, late 80s, sorry. Houseboat Horror. For some weird reason, they have a quote here from Quentin Tarantino. I'm not really sure if you can read that, but I can read it for you, but it sounds really strange, so I have to just read it for you. Like this movie called Houseboat Horror, and that was so far my favorite one I've seen. It doesn't even seem like a quote. It just seems like someone just took some mid-sentence that he said and just put it on the front cover. But yeah, that's really strange. Now, finally, we're at the Lost Stack. I didn't realize we've been talking about movies for almost 40 minutes now, so sorry for that. So the first Blu-ray I picked up was a film called Satan's Slave. I think I had this one before, I'm not really sure, but this one has such a weird, stupid premise. I mean, the killer in this film, I mean, his entire motivation as to why he's killing people is just really baffling, and really weird acting as well. But I mean, it's one of those films that it's quite charming because of how bizarre it is. And the next one is a film which I think people have said now, this is like the best Ulay Lommel film. Yula Lommel, he's probably most famous, unfortunately, for most of the serial killer films he directed in the late 90s, early 2000s. Most of them were really, really bad. The only like Yula Lommel film that I've seen that I've actually liked has been the first Boogeyman. That other film he made as well, the Witch film, which I can't remember the title of right now. I wasn't really that big fan of that one either. But this is his film called Tenderness of Wolves. Of the Wolves. Yeah, this one I've actually heard really good things about. So you might wonder what really happened with his directing career, really, because it's just, how could you go from a fairly decent film to just garbage? Now the next one I picked up mainly because of the cover art, and I think this is another one of those like throwback films, like throwback 80s films, like this wanted to look like an 80s film. And the film is called Mega Time Squad. I just look at that cover art. Don't tell me you don't want to see this. And it has a really weird, like, is that like a baboon? Is that called a baboon? One of those like aggressive primates there with a shotgun. And then we have a film by director Teru Ishii, who made so many like violent, bloody, gory films in these already in the 60s and 70s. And this film is called Shogun's Joy of Torture. Yeah, I've realized that Arrow has given that director lots of love, because it just seems at this point that they aim to like release every single film that he's directed. So yeah. So the next one is another one of those that I've heard really weird things about. The film being El Topo by Jodorowsky. Probably butchered his name, sorry for that. And then of course I also needed to get The Holy Mountain as well. I already have Santon Sangre or whatever it's called. It's a really old Anchor Bay DVD release I have of that one. I have no idea where I put it in the collection, but that's another one that I've heard really good things about. Now the next one is a 80s comedy or action film with Christopher Lambert and Christopher Lloyd. And the film is called Why Me? Yeah. And then we have a film by William Peter Blatty, who I think wrote the novel for The Exorcist, or like what the book that it's based on. And I think he also directed the third Exorcist film. But this is his film called The Ninth Configuration. Yeah. Does this have David Warner in it? I believe it is. No, it's not. It's Stacy Keach, sorry. And then we have the next one, which is called Gone in 60 Seconds. This is the original one. I know they made a remake of this with Nicolas Cage, but I haven't seen that one. I've not seen this one either, so I wanted to get this before I even tried to consider picking up the remake. So, yeah. Speaking of remakes, the next one is a film that I've always wanted to see. Once again, a film that I've seen for sale numerous of times before, but for some reason I never picked it up. So, but this is the remake of The Crazies. I think I actually did have this in the collection before, but I think I just gave it away or traded it in or something. I'm not really sure. Yeah, I actually really like the first one, or like the original one. But I've heard this is supposed to be a really well-made remake. So yeah, The Crazies. And then we have a Vinegar Syndrome release, I believe. Is this a Vinegar Syndrome? It has to be. Yes, it is. The film is called Sister, Sister. The reason why I picked this one up was because of Jennifer Jason Leigh. I think she's a really amazing actress. And yeah, that's really the main reason why. And here you get the... that's the other cover art right there. Like a drama film, I believe. I mean, it looks like a horror film, but I think it's more of a drama film based on what I've read. So, yeah. And then we have a double pack with Funky Forest, First Contact, and the Warped Forest. Sorry, two Japanese films. So yeah, I'm not really sure if you have the same cover art. I think. Oh no, that's the cover art for the sequel. Oh, for some reason I completely messed this up, didn't I? Yeah, right there. And then we continue with Japanese films. The next one is called Confessions. From the this might be, I think this is from 2011 or something. 2010, sorry. And then we have another Mondo Macabro release, and this is another one of film directed by Umberto Lenzi, An Ideal Place to Kill. Yeah. And then we have a Western film called The Lost Hunt. Pretty much a blind buy, but looks really interesting. Now, for some reason, I picked this one up because I was thinking I might need to give it another chance. This one was only released on VHS before, and I had a really weird, sketchy bootleg of this one. So that's how I watched it the first time, and I just didn't care for it at all. But when I saw this release, I thought, well, I'm gonna give it another chance to see if I like it or not. If I don't like it or despise it, I might give it away or something. The movie is called Bloodbeat, about some weird samurai guy. This is such a strange film, and I just didn't get the whole thing. And then we have the film that everyone has been talking about, so I'm not going to say too much about it, and I've never seen it, but only are good things about it. X. That came out like was it last year? I believe it was last year. So, and I know there's a sequel to this, and I think they make a sequel to that one as well. I think they're supposed to be standalone films in general, like in some weird way. So, yeah. And now finally, the last one I picked up was a media book release of the film called Sidekicks with Chuck Norris and Jonathan Brandis. That's the main reason why I picked it up, because those two actors and the whole premise, or like the storyline, that sounds really interesting to me. Yeah, kind of feels like a Karate Kid film in general, just when I come think of the whole storyline and the actors in it. So yeah, Sidekicks, never seen, but always wanted to see it. So yeah. So that was all, I believe. Yeah, that was all the films I for this update video. Sorry, I've almost been talking for 1 hour. So I'm just gonna end it like that. So keep your eyes open for the next video. I'm not really sure what type of video I'm gonna do next. It's definitely not gonna be an update video because, yeah, I don't have anything else to show you. So it's probably gonna be a top list. I'm not seeing it made a top list in quite a while, or maybe like a horror review or something. So keep your eyes open for next, and yeah, see you in the next video. Bye bye.